Hi everyone! This video is going to show you my race kit from the Highland Trail 2021. So things you should know about the race this year. The forecast was a lot colder than average and there's potentially quite a big rain event coming a couple of days in. And I was aiming to do this in 6 days or under, so if your plan would be much shorter, much longer, that's going to change your kit requirements. One of the main changes to my setup from a kind of normal riding setup is these really big ugly bar ends. So I really loved them, they were amazing. And the wider palm just gives you a much better position, like a much more flat hand. I really enjoyed having different hand positions up here with the bar end. One thing I did find was that I had to 2-finger brake with it. I couldn't quite get enough power just with one. But I guess over a long ride that's probably good to share the stress on your hands. Okay, before I start unpacking the bags on my bike, so I just want to show you the kit that I was wearing. Now you might notice that this hasn't been washed yet, but before you judge me, go ride the Highland Trail, go straight back to doing outdoor work the week after, and then see if you still want to judge me for it. But if I start out with my shoes, so I ride flats on a mountain bike, and I think that for me is way better for pushing. So this is my winter footwear setup, which I was not expecting to be riding. So I have shoes that are 2 sizes too big with me for winter, with the neoprene covers. And then I was wearing a sort of thin merino sock with a thicker sealskin sock over the top. I actually had dry feet, bar a little bit of sweat, till the very finish. I did have to take my shoes and socks off for one of the river crossings, the really deep one in Fisherfield, but my feet were pretty warm and comfortable all the way. My feet did swell up quite a lot towards the end, and I was able just to remove the liner sock, and then that gave my feet some extra space and gave me a lot of pain relief. So I think that's quite a useful thing to be able to do. Then on my legs I was wearing again my winter tights, which I wasn't expecting to, so these are a little bit fleecy inside, a little bit windproofy on the outside. And I started off wearing these shorts, which to be honest, useless, shouldn't have bothered with them. Wouldn't recommend, just have waterproof shorts in your tights. And I did have both waterproof shorts and waterproof trousers, and I did wear both of them together for probably 2/3 of the race. No particular reason other than it just helps to keep you that bit drier, gives you an extra layer of warmth and protection, especially when you're descending fast down trails that are running with water, all that spray coming up, it just gives you that bit more protection. Probably not for everyone, it's just something that I do. For my top half I just wore a little merino t-shirt that's a smart wool one. I quite like them because they don't really get stinky. They feel very comfortable to me if I'm wearing them for a long period of time. And then over that I just had a little synthetic gilet, just added a bit of extra warmth for my body. Then my waterproof for my top half was a big Puffy Jacket. So I absolutely love Paramo for Scottish riding. This has seen me all the way through Scottish winter and it's been brilliant. I did get a little bit wet under it, not gonna lie, on the really wet day. But the great thing about Paramo is you can keep wearing your wet layers under it and it pushes it out and you will dry off eventually. The downside of it is it's quite warm, so when it got hotter towards the end of the race I did have to take that off and put that in my bag. I couldn't carry on wearing it. I thought that was great. Other layers for my top half, I have a fleece in my front row, and I also have a Puffy Jacket in there, both of which I wore at different points during the race. So for my hands I wore again my kind of winter riding gloves, which wasn't intending to, but these are kind of a soft shell, so they're quite windproof and quite warm. And then I had another pair which had a little bit of Primaloft insulation across the top, and then if all else failed I also had some Overmitts, which I'll show you later, which could have gone over the top of either of these gloves as an extra layer of kind of windproofing and insulation. I also wore a running vest for my ride. Now that's kind of personal preference. Mountain bike rucksack does exactly the same job, but I've got a really short back and I also have an inflammatory disease in my sacroiliac joint, so any pressure on that can trigger that to start swelling up. So for me, a race vest is just way more, or a running vest is just way more comfortable. It's just much shorter and lighter. And I found this really useful for extra capacity, so I had food a lot of the time in the pockets down the sides. In the main body, I had a dry bag, you could put layers in here, I could put food in here. I've got a few things like my head torch and electricals, stuff like that in there as well. And then it just gave me a little bit of extra water capacity on the front. So water's not really a problem on the Highland Trail, you can do it all on a 750 bottle, but I was putting things like Coke or energy drinks in my main bottle, so it was always good just to have water as well in these. So yeah. Okay, let's have a look and see what's in the bags. So those are my temp holes. And then super solid dry bag, this really nice one from Relate. And yeah, totally waterproof, I didn't worry about that at all. So I got my Puffy Jacket. Now this was forming part of my sleep system, but rather than, it's also made it more versatile, so for my sleep system I could have gone a heavier weight sleeping bag, but then I wouldn't have had as much space for extra layers, and I thought that it was more useful to have extra layers that I could ride in or sleep in. So the one downside of that system is that I did wear this on the really wet day for the long descents, and it did get wet, which meant that that night I couldn't sleep in it as well, so that was a little bit chillier. So that is the downside with that plan. So I have a little hat, so this is a Polytech Alpha riding hat, and it is amazing. I wore this all winter, and it came out on the wet day for the Highland Trail as well, and I was so grateful for this. It was also surprisingly nice as a little cozy head warmer for sleeping in, made me feel a little bit more comfortable. Okay, so I had my spare pair of gloves, so those are just a bit more insulated than the other ones. And then these are the Overmitts. So these again are a running item, and they're just like a lightly insulated windproofy mitten, but they're big enough that they fit over my riding gloves, and then you just get that really warm layer if you need it. So I just had a simple fleece top as well. I used that quite a lot for riding in, used it for sleeping in every night. Just a nice thing to have with. And then I had my sleeping mat, and I brought along the inflation bag from my winter one to use with it, and that was quite nice. It was just nice not to have to inflate that every night. So this is a full length Neo-Air sleeping mat. I wasn't going to take one. I was going to take my warmer sleeping bag instead of a mat, but I'm really glad I did take this. The first night must have been about -3, there was a really hard frost, and this thing was just brilliant to have with me. It doesn't take long to inflate either, so it's worth the effort. So I had full length insulated trousers with me, which I'm not sure how many riders would have carried that. So again, this was something that I could ride in and something that I could use to sleep in at night. In the end, I didn't really need to ride with them. I probably wouldn't take full trousers on a different forecast, but just because it was so cold, I thought that it might be something that was useful to me. Okay, then the final things in here. I brought along my liner just for a bit of luxury, and because I'm using a quilt, I thought it was nice just to have that extra layer between me and the mat. Also, I wasn't intending to really get changed to sleep, so I thought that this would just help gather all the dirt and keep it out of my nice quilt. So I just brought along a quilt rather than a sleeping bag. I just thought it was kind of space saving, and would be plenty warm enough. It worked really well, apart from when I had my Puffy Jacket wet, and then it was cold, so there was quite a lot of sort of shiver being going on. But I think I would definitely take this again. If it had been any warmer, it would have been absolutely fine. So my sleep bag basically just had my tent in it. So I had a full tent rather than just a bivvy. Tent versus bivvy, that's quite a big debate. A lot of the other riders I saw were using kind of tarps or bivvy shelters. I'm obviously very lucky that I have this because it's so small and so light for the size it is. So this is a Hyperlight Mountain Gear Durigo. But I think a tent can be really useful, especially, so my aim was, you know, under 6 days. I was potentially out, you know, 5 full nights. You've got to sleep if you're doing that. And in Scotland, well, it's going to be raining, potentially going to be really midgy, and I can't sleep that well in just a bivvy bag. The other thing about bivvy bags is, of course, it's really hard to separate your sleeping bag from the condensation on the inside. And so a lot of people found their kit got really wet straight away, and then they were struggling to be warm enough at night. Whereas having a tent allowed me to keep my quilt dry a lot better, and I think I got much better sleeps for it. So that's my preference, but obviously different things work for different people. I also had, which I don't have any left of, but I had a little bit of Tailwind nutrition, which isn't something that I tend to use normally. I just think it's quite overpriced. I like eating real food, but I do sometimes struggle to get enough food in me, and so having those like sachets you can pour into your water bottle and give you a bit of calories, that's really good for me. And I also use some of the recovery powders before I went to bed at night. So they just kind of live right down at the bottom of the bag and help it all pack nice and firmly in there. Okay, so things from my frame bag then. Very important, have some chamois cream. I forgot to take a pair of padded shorts with me, so I rode the whole thing just in my tights with no padding, and it was alright actually, but this stuff was super helpful. I used nearly a full tube of that over the 5 and a bit days I was out. Emergency Mars bars, sweeties, had food packed in here generally, and then my tools and spares. So my toolkit, there's kind of different approaches you can take. So some riders I know are going for like take everything to make sure you can finish. I guess I was going along more of the lines of the stuff that I might expect to go wrong in a normal year, I'll take stuff for that, but anything really unusual, anything wild, that's tough luck, I'm going to drop out. So I had things like spare gear cables, brake pads which I definitely used. I had quick links and spare tubeless valves. Just normal things, tire levers, that kind of stuff in there. I carried a big pump just because that's what I'd use for Scotland. If there's midges out and you're trying to fix puncture, you really want it to happen quickly. So for me it's worth the wait to carry that. I like carrying spare volley straps, they're really useful for fixing stuff. If strap on your bag snaps or something, you can just use that to replace it. And then about 1 million cable ties, just in case. So this box contains all my Tubeless Repair Kit. It's also got a needle and thread for sewing up a completely ripped tyre, and it's got a little tyre boot in there too. And then one of the other big debates, how many tubes to carry. So I always had 2 tubes with me. Didn't use either of them, didn't get any punches, which was nice. But I just thought having 2 would give me peace of mind. Okay, so this little bag here, I just found that really useful for kind of stuff that I might need on a regular basis. So chain lube, I think I was having to relube my chain about 3 times a day. So that was full, and I guess there's like a day's worth left in there. I had not Vaseline, but just a tub of stuff that I could put on my butt if it got really sore. Just kind of herbal cream. Lecky tape, useful for many things. A lip balm, super useful. Would have been better if I had got one that was also sun cream, because my lips did get quite badly burnt. I did have sun cream in here as well, which was very useful even with the wet forecast. I keep my tie lever in there to be really accessible. And then I've had kind of various different things, so because I ended up drinking loads of Coke, I got heartburn, so ended up having to get some stuff for that. And then just general paracetamol, painkillers, that kind of thing. Antihistamines as well. So one thing I had was a really strong hay fever reaction, which isn't normal for me, to the point where I was struggling to breathe. There's one day I only did 60 miles in there, and that's the only time I considered scratching, was I just couldn't get any air in. So I was really grateful I had antihistamines with me, because I think I would have had to drop out if I hadn't. Then the front one, that was literally just for food. I'm not really going to talk about food because I think that's super personal, and it also depends a lot on what you can get in the shops along route. Okay, so this is the dry bag that's out of my second feed bag. And I had my helmet light in there, and I had my battery pack, so that was really useful for recharging. I was using a Garmin InReach Mini as my tracking device, and the battery kept dying on that, so I used this to recharge it, and this would also work for my phone or my light, so quite versatile. I had spare batteries for my Garmin e-Treks for navigating, and I think I had to change those once over the five and a bit days that I was out. And then I just had a super basic first aid kit here, so I had one big serious wound dressing, and then a bunch of bandages that I could just use to sort of strap up if anything had gone really wrong. What bike to ride for the Highland Trail? That is probably the most common question that I've been asked, and the answer is the same for any bike packing. Whatever bike you have that you are comfortable riding long distances. Obviously the Highland Trail is a mountain bike geared route. Ruth, one of the other ladies, did finish this year on a gravel bike. Personally, that wouldn't be my first choice, but you know, Liam, who won, he was on a steel single speed. You don't need the fanciest bike to be able to get around the course. Saying that, I really enjoyed riding my Spearfish. I found her super comfortable, and I'm quite prone to getting nerve damage in my hands and feet, and so for me I think the full suspension actually offered a lot of comfort and has potentially speeded up my recovery quite well. But don't be put off if that's not what you've got. Have a look through. There's been a few different articles on different bikes, different setups for the Highland Trail, and you can see there's such a massive variation, and that's kind of one of the cool things about it, is you can kind of rock up on whatever bike and just give it your best and have such an amazing adventure. So finally, is there anything I would do differently? I was really happy with my setup. I used pretty much everything I had. I would remember padded shorts next time, because I think that would have helped me a lot towards the end when my butt was pretty sore. And for the ladies, I wasn't expecting to have my period because I just finished it like the day before the Highland Trail started. But because our bodies are so wonderful, as soon as they get stressed out or our eating changes or exercise more, they can somehow produce another period. And rather than stressing about getting to a shop or what I might find in that shop, I would just pat myself some wet wipes and my moon cup, and then I'd be sorted regardless of where it appeared on the course. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you found that useful, and any questions, just sit them below and I'll do my best to answer them for you.